builder's dream, huh? You know, when we start getting into the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and I said Mishkan, not Michigan. I'm going to be very clear on that. So when we're getting to building the Mishkan, notice you have to have the blueprint before you can actually start the building. You know, you ever wonder why when you're reading through the Torah and we start to talk about the tabernacle, it's like, so this is how it's to be done, and then the people gathered these things, and then they took these things in order, and then they assembled these things, and then they brought these things to, and it's like a repetition, time and time and time and time and time. And if you're reading, you're like, didn't I already read this? Is this like, didn't I just come here? But that's why it's written that way, because it's important. We need to see what the heart of the Father is in these things, okay? Because the idea of having the tabernacle here was not just having a building, you know, for the people to gather around, you know, rally around and to look at, you know? Remember, the purpose of having the tabernacle in their midst was so that Yahweh would dwell within them. And how can we say, I mean, you often hear, well, we don't need the tabernacle or the temple or anything like that, because don't you know we are the temple, right? The problem with that is, and I'm not saying that that's wrong, but the problem with that is we don't look to see what the tabernacle and the temple was built for. So how can you say that, well, we are a temple if you don't know how the temple functioned? If you don't know what its purpose was? If you don't know what it was supposed to do in the midst? You know? It's like we say, we got to go all the way back to the beginning, go back to the basics. I like how Brad Scott puts it. We can't say that a dove is a representation of the Holy Spirit if you don't know what a dove is. So you first have to go back and say, this is what this is why. Then we can go in later and say, and this represents this. Okay? So before we can really jump into these things, we have to say, well, what's the foundation for why? You know? And who was to do it? You know, a lot of times you read through this, you're like, okay, Yahweh gave Moshe the vision to establish this tabernacle, right? Absolutely. And we read that, to me, that was one of the miracles in the building it, because Yahweh showed Moshe how everything was supposed to be. Moshe told the people how it was supposed to be, and they did it and brought it to him with someone else's oversight. Brought it to him, and he said, yep, that's what I saw before it was assembled. That's a miracle, guys. You know, with how many people are involved in this process of building something exactly the way that God showed it to Moses? We can't talk two people into building something and no, that's not what I saw. You know, and that's a small project. You know, let alone something this intricate, right? So Moshe was given the vision to establish this tabernacle in their midst, but whose responsibility was it to do it? The people. See, it was not Moshe's responsibility to build the tabernacle. It was the responsibility of the people to come in to make it established in their midst. And again, one more time, kind of like, I've been saying this a lot recently, one more time we see the importance of a people called Israel. No one person can do it by themselves. We need to be a part of a people. Okay? So when we all come together with a common purpose or common goal is when we can establish what the Father wants to do in our midst. Okay? And so that's what we have. All right. So whose responsibility was it to build the tabernacle? The people's responsibility. We can't even say it was the Levites' responsibility, because it was the Levites' responsibility to serve within the tabernacle, but it was the people's responsibility to actually build it. And so this kind of makes me think about the work of the body. You know, the work of the body at large. We have, like Ephesians talks about, the people in ministry that are set and established to equip you to do the work of the ministry. So whose job is it to do the work of the ministry? The pastors? The teachers? No, everybody. Okay? Because we have to train the people to do the work of the ministry. So what is the work of the ministry? To be part of the body. That's the work of the ministry. There's many different things you put in there, but it all comes down to be part of the body. Okay? And to function as such. To point glory back to the Father. Okay? And the tabernacle does that. All right? So when we go to establish the tabernacle, the people had to see the need to have it in their midst. Because when they leave Sinai, what's going to happen? They're going to walk through the wilderness. Where's the Father going to dwell with them? He says, I want to dwell in the midst of you, but there has to be a safety there in their midst to protect the clean and the unclean, the holy and the common, to keep from encroachment, to do all these things within the camp. So that's when the tabernacle, when they moved, they broke it down, they moved, and then when they stopped for camp, they set it up. Talk about miracles. I moved 5 miles and we end up losing things. I'm not kidding, really. True story. Okay? They moved the tabernacle 42 encampments in the wilderness. 42. Didn't lose one nail, one socket, one panel, one nothing. Somebody was doing their job right. Which means they had to pay attention to these details. But in order to pay attention to these details, they had to have it on their heart to do so. We are not going to build a tabernacle in our midst if we don't see it as important. We are not going to be part of a body if we don't see it as important. We are not going to help build a community and help build each other and lift each other up if we don't see it as important. So we can't keep looking at ourselves and thinking, well, I'm what's important. No, being a part of a people to glorify the Father is what's important. And you don't lose your identity in that, by the way, because you're a part of that. Okay? But that's where, again, we're trying to work it all out. Okay? So, here we go. You ready to get into it now? As if we haven't already, right? Exodus 25, 1 and 2. So Yahweh says to Moshe, speak to whom? The people of Israel. Okay, so like I said, this is not like Moses' responsibility, Aaron's sons, the leaders. No, the people of Israel. Okay? And that they take for me, the Hebrew is vayichechu li, a contribution, Terumah, from every man whose heart moves them, you shall receive the contribution for me. A couple things we're going to see in this, okay? 3 things we're going to break this down as. First off is where the scripture says, yichechu li, to take for me. This is something that we can look at, that we should look at. Because we say, well, we're going to give to God, right? I mean, there are things that we should give God, right? But how do we do that if we cannot walk up to his door, knock on it, hand it to him? How can we say we're going to give something to him? We can say we're going to give something to him and dedicate something to him and do all that, but if there's no accountability to that or actually something we can actually give over, can we really do it? Okay, I'm thinking of Ananias and Sapphira as an example. You know? No one said they had to do what they did. No one said they had to sell a property and give it to the needs for the community and give it to the assembly. No one said they had to do it. It was their decision. They sold the property. Could they have kept part of the price for themselves? Absolutely. No one told them they had to do what they did. But what was the problem? So when they came in and said, was this all of it? They could have said, no, we kept a portion for ourselves, but this is what was laid on our heart to give. But no, they said, nope, we gave it all. Nope. Fall over dead. Youth group carried them out and buried them. I'm not kidding. The young men carried them out and buried them. Okay? Later on, wife came in, same thing. You see the guys walking in from outside going, again? Yeah? Yeah, we put it next to the other guy, you know. But this is the thing when God says to take for me. Well, how do you take for him? You have to receive it. Someone has to receive it in order to take on his behalf. So, this is what I found in the Pentateuch by Samson Raphael Hirsch from Judaica Press. Awesome stuff if you can find it, okay? But this is what he was saying regarding Terumah. Nothing is to be given directly to God, but the gifts of each individual are to be given to who? The community. For what? For divine purposes. When we say we're going to give to Yah, what we're doing is we're giving to those who on behalf are collecting for the needs of the community in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Whether it's a local congregation or whether it's charitable things or charities or whatever it is, it's someone who is working on that behalf. So when we are giving to God, we are giving of our gifts and of our blood, sweat, and tears and of all things with us, we're giving of ourself to the community. Maybe indirectly, But that's what we're still doing. Okay? So whatever the Father is giving us, we return to him. Isn't that what he's asking? That which he has so freely given us, he's only asking for a portion of it back. Right? So it implies that it is not the individual, but the community who has to erect the institutions for God's purposes. And it is not for single givers, but for the community that these arrangements have to be established. So who was supposed to build the tabernacle? The people. The people. It was the community that was supposed to build the tabernacle within their midst for the sake and for the need of the people of Israel. Moses was supposed to oversee that, but even in that aspect, he wasn't the foreman. He had the plan. He had the vision. He showed Bezalel and Aholiab, this is what was given to me, and then Bezalel and Aholiab had to oversee the actual literal construction of it. And then once it was all done, then they had to like Tetris it together. You know, they had to make sure it all fit right. And then it all had to be consecrated and anointed. See, there's a process for all this, right? So how can we, the created, give back to Elohim who made us? Here's the thing, everything we have is his. If everything we have is his, how can we give back to him if it's all his anyway? You know, you may have heard we're owners of nothing but overseers of everything. Really, that's kind of how it is. But even in the midst of the king speaking, you know, we read in Chronicles 29, he says, so here, you know, we have a tabernacle we're building, but how can we give back to God? How can we give him anything? You know, he understood that idea. Okay? We read Chronicles 29:11. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. Man, you just kind of feel that when he gets off starting off, right? For all that is in the heavens and in the earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Yahweh, and you are exalted as head above all. Both riches and honor come from you. You rule over all. In your hand are power and might, and in your hand it is to make great and give strength to all. And now we thank you, our God, and we praise your glorious name. Now listen to this. Look at how it kind of shifts. But who am I? It's the king talking here, guys. Who am I? And what is my people that we should be able to offer willingly? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. When we stand before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who is ruler over everything and who owns everything, what can we give him? Nothing, really. But we present ourselves. How do we present ourselves? Of that which he has given to us, we give to him. Father, everything you've given me belongs to you. Use it however you see fit. Just let me be a part of it. Right? Don't we just want to be a part of what the Father's doing in our midst? Right? So when we give to Yahweh, we're giving of ourselves for the benefit of who? Ourselves? No, for the community, for the sake of the body at large, which in turn you do benefit because you are part of that body. Okay? But when we start to see the needs of the body of Messiah, and we start to work towards his kingdom be here on earth as it is in heaven, then it affects all of us in a positive way. Right? Romans 12, 1-18 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a what? Living sacrifice. What do we say? What's the problem with the living sacrifice? Keeps trying to get off the altar. You know? It's hot. You better believe it, buddy. You know, but that's the process. Right? To burn out the impurities, to be consumed, because it is the fire that causes the offering to go up in smoke into the presence of the Most High. If you put an offering on the altar and there's no fire, it's just death. It's the fire that causes the offering to go into the presence of Yah. Okay? So present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that the testing you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. Verse 4. For as is in one body we have many members, and the members do not have the same function. So when he says, present yourself as a living sacrifice, that means we also have to acknowledge we are part of a whole, and everyone within that has a different function. Everyone within that has a different purpose. If every part of the body was exactly the same part, you'd be a freak. You wouldn't be able to function. And truth be told, you wouldn't live very long. So, if we understand we are all part of a body, and every part has its function, that means not every part is going to take on the role of the other part, but it will all work together to function to make the body whole and perfect. If one part of the body is damaged or hurt or infected, it affects the whole part of the body, doesn't it? But when every part is functioning as it should, it brings wholeness. It brings health. And it's called restoration, right? Okay, verse 5. So we, though many, are what? One body in Messiah. And individually, members of who? Do you ever think about that? We say, so we are all part of a body, and we are all members of that body joined with Messiah. It's not what it says. I mean, it's true, but that's not what this right here says. Because this right here says, if we are joined to that body, then we are members of one another. Which means we help protect the different parts of the body. We help function together with the different parts of the body. If one part of the body is hurt, we don't yell at it, get mad at it. I mean, if we smack our hand with a hammer, we don't cut it off because we hit our finger. You follow what I'm saying? If we damage part of our hand, we fix it. Okay? We don't amputate. And unfortunately, a lot of times we have that mentality. You know, oh, that part of the body's hurt, cut it off. No, we can't operate that way. Okay? We need to work restoratively. Verse 6. So having gifts that differ according to the grace that is given us, let us use them. We each have different gifts. We need to be able to use those gifts within the confines of the body. The problem is, if we want to use our gifts within the body, but not submitted to the people in the body, those are rogue cells in the body. Those need to be eliminated. Verse 7, if service in our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching, the one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads with zeal, the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness, let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Verse 10, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. Verse 11, do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer, contribute to the needs of the saints, and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Verse 16, live in harmony with one another. What if I can't sing? Yeah, Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Problem is, not everybody wants to live in peace. You can't make them. It's not your job to make them. But it's your job to be a peacemaker. You make peace in your life and try to have the peace with those around you. If they don't want peace, there's nothing you can do about it. But for you, learn to live at peace with all. Okay? So, Terumah. The word Terumah is from the word rum, which means to be raised above something. Hence, I like this, lifted up out of. It is to be separated for a higher purpose. It is related to the word nataf, which means to flow from within. So when we say it's a complete freedom of will, when something is given like here, it's a free will offering, something that is given freely. So when it's given freely, it's given lifted up from you because you have a heart to do so. It represents you. It's not just I'm giving an item or I'm giving something. You are giving a gift that is flowing from within you to do so. And that's different, you know? That's different from just like, oh, hey, I picked this up off the ground. I don't know what it is, but you can have it. Versus, you know what? There's a need here. I have this that can help fill that need. Let me give it so the need can be met. And because part of the community, I don't care if I get acknowledgement for it or not. But it flows from within us. See, and when we lift up something that flows from within us, that's how we give it to the Father. Right? Because we give unselfishly for whatever is needed at that time. Terumah also represents a wave offering. You know the different offerings that were given for the tabernacle? One of these offerings was a wave offering. It was a free will offering. So what is a wave offering? Something that is lifted up. When you lift something up in the presence of Yah, it represents you giving yourself to Him. So the attitude is wholeheartedly giving of ourselves. David represented this well. 2 Samuel 24, verses 23 to 24. Aravnah said to David, "Let my lord the king take and offer up anything that seems good to him. Here are the oxen for the burnt offering. You can use the threshing sledges, the yokes for the oxen as firewood. All this, O king, Aravnah gives to the king." Then Aravnah said to the king, "May Adonai your God accept you." But the king said to Aravnah, "No, I insist on buying it for you." He was buying the threshing floor so he could build an altar there to Yah. Okay, there was a plague in the land. He went to make offerings so that it would cease this plague. And so he says, I insist on buying it from you at a price. I refuse to offer to Adonai, my God, burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 1.25 pounds of silver shekels. So David says, how can I offer Yahweh something that's supposed to be from me that didn't come from me? Yeah, I can give offerings all day with your money. That's what David was telling Aravnah. I mean, he had a good heart. He said, "King, whatever you need is yours for the service of God. Just take whatever you need. Count it as a blessing. I'm honored to do so." There's nothing really wrong with that. But David said, how can I make offerings on my behalf that are not from me? See, and that's kind of the attitude we have, or we need to have. When we give, is it truly coming from us to do so? Because that's the pouring of the heart. So again, Terumah is a present that is offered up, especially like a sacrifice or a tribute. In Aramaic, the word Terumah means to separate. So it is something that is separated. We should separate the mundane for sacred purposes. In other words, the day-to-day things, just whatever. I mean, they're not holy, they're just common, just normal things. But there are things that we can separate from our daily lives for holy purpose. Like the offerings that the people gave. This was daily life things that they dealt with that they separated for holy purpose. Right? Like the Terumah. It would be separated for holy purpose. Now this is interesting to note. This was done voluntarily. An offering was not given, or an offering that is not given with the correct heart, what does it do to the offering? It invalidates it. Like remember the peace offering? If someone gives a peace offering, none of it was to remain till the morning. But if they keep it past its time, keep it past the day that it was supposed to be for, then it's counted as if it was never given at all. And actually could be counted as a trespass because they didn't follow through with as they were supposed to. Okay? So it invalidates the offering if it was not given with the right heart. How can you come before the Father and say, I give a thanksgiving offering or a free will offering, but not really? You know, you can't do that. Okay? So when they went to the temple and they were to bring a peace offering, they had to have thanksgiving in their heart. They had to be thankful to do so. You know? Otherwise, it doesn't count as a thanksgiving offering, which, by the way, a thanksgiving offering was a type of a peace offering. Okay? Also, it is not done by coercion, manipulation, or let's get the worship team up here to play that song one more time so I can take up another offering. Hello? Did I just say that? Yeah, I did. It was not to be done through emotional manipulation or emotional influence or bribery. If you can give this offering, this blessing is going to come to you today. Don't see that. So, free will offering was not something that was given because you were coerced to do so. It was on your heart to do so. Moshe went and he told the people, Yahweh said to take up a contribution from whoever wants to give it. These are the things that are going to be needed. The rest is up to you. If you really want to see what the Father desires in our midst done, you'll see it happen. That which is important to you, you do. Is that true? Absolutely. See, if we don't consider something important, we won't work towards that. It's funny because if something is important to us, nothing will stand in our way. If we really want something, we're really excited about an event or whatever, nothing is going to stand in our way. Everything that comes up to try to prevent us from whatever, we solve the problem so that we can do what we want to do. If we don't want to do something, every little thing becomes a word from God that it must not be so. Just because we don't want to do it. If we don't want to do it, I woke up this morning, I just felt a little tired. Could it have anything to do with the fact that you only slept an hour because you stayed up all night? Whereas if you had something to do the next day that you wanted to do, you would have went to bed early. Just saying. If you want something, you will make it happen. So do we consider building the community in our midst important? This is what was happening within Israel right now. Because here they were at the mountain, they were at Sinai, but they knew they were going to leave to go to the land. They want to carry the presence of the Most High with them. How do they do that when He's on the mountain? We need to figure out how He dwells in our midst. Right? Okay, the etymology of the word Terumah is not simply a contribution, but literally raised up. Something that is raised up. So when we give, it is not just our contribution, but we who are raised up. That's why when a person brought the offerings to the Mishkan, they bring this animal, and this animal was a representation of their life, their livelihood, their work, everything they had. Like I said, their blood and sweat and tears and everything that they had. This was a representation of all that. And this animal, the ones that went on the altar, to go on the altar, and it got on the fire, and then the fire and the smoke, and it literally went up into the presence of Yah. Thus, we are represented into the presence of the Father because of the offering that represents us. Okay? So we survive by what we are given, but we achieve dignity by what we give. Did you catch that? You work, you get a paycheck. We survive by what we receive. But we get dignity by what we give. See? So we choose how we give. The feminine noun terumah comes from the word rum, which is the formation of terumah is parallel to the formation of wave offering, tenufa, the terumah and tenufa, which from the nuf, which means to wave. The words are found in the same verses, closely connected in the Torah. Okay? Because in each time it is support for the priests or their service within the holy. When we have Terumah and Tenufa together, it's in a representation of the Levites in the service and what they receive from that. Exodus 29:27. You shall sanctify the breast of the wave offering, Tenufa, which is waved, Nuf, and the shoulder of the raised offering, Terumah, which is raised up, Rum, and the ram of the consecration, even that which is for Aaron, and that which is for his sons. So then something that is raised up and presented to the Father becomes something holy and is now used for holy purposes. So who can determine what is to be done with the holy things? It was Aaron and his sons and the Levites that were to establish that. Okay? So in most cases, terumah refers to designated something for a higher purpose, or lifting a part of a quantity from a larger quantity. So lifting something up or taking a part of something to be lifted up. Okay? There are varieties of gifts from which the term terumah was applied. two groups of Terumot. One, sacrifice or redemption of the firstborn, which also falls in the category of tithe of first fruits, right? Because the redemption of the firstborn is a first fruit, and then the redemption of it. So the tithe of first fruits. And then two is the general tithes. The general offering, or Terumah, or the great offering, Terumah Gedolah, was a portion of the finished grain, wine, and oil that was separated for the priest prior to the first tithe, Ma'aseh Rishon, which was separated for the Levite. So again, when we see that things were given, there were portions of that was to support the work of the tabernacle and the temple. In other words, if the people did not have the heart to give to the temple, then there were no Levites to serve in said temple. Therefore, temple would cease to exist. So what was the heart of the people? If the people had the heart to see the temple in their midst, they would have to give to, so it would continue to be so. And think about, we don't stop to realize that in Israel, how much of life and the people around it really revolved around the temple and the tabernacle. You know, there was so much, I mean, think about the temple in Jerusalem. So many people were employed by what needed to happen in the temple. Not just the Levites. I mean, because you had to have grain offerings. Who farmed it? You had to have the different kinds of animals. Who raised them? You had to have the libation offerings, the wine. Who made the vineyards? You know, the mikveh pools of the water. Who had to make sure that the water was flowing properly and going to the right places? Who had to make sure things were clean? There's so many people involved in the service of the tabernacle and the temple. And so the people had to see the need for it and to have the desire for it so that they could continue to have it in their midst. And they had to do so thankfully. We're taught that the second temple ceased to exist because of baseless hatred. Will God dwell in the midst of his people when they're full of hate? No, we need to be a people full of thanksgiving, right? Okay. So Terumah means to rise up. Rabbi Zvi Hirsch of Rimenov, Poland, in his commentary on the Torah, Be'erot Hamayim, or wells of water, makes this observation around this word Terumah. Terumah has the same letters as the word Torah with one extra letter, Mem. Kind of interesting. Terumah and Torah have the same letters in them, except for the Mem. Mem, what does Mem represent numerically? 40. So the extra letter Mem represent the 40 days that Moshe remained on Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. Thus, he says, the main path to raising ourselves is to fulfill the values of the Torah. In other words, Moses went up to receive the Torah, and as we receive the heart of the Father written on our heart, which we call his Torah, what does it do for us but elevate us into the presence of the Father, even in our daily lives? Exodus 25, verse 1. Did we already do that? Yes, but I want to talk about this third part. We did that parts 1 and 2. I want to talk about this third part. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall receive a contribution. From every man whose heart what? Moves him, you shall receive a contribution from me. So, what if they didn't want to give? You know the short answer? Don't give. Because you're not going to get any benefit out of it. But the one who gives freely is going to rejoice when they see it done in their midst. Faith forced is not personal, and it will not stand. You cannot draft somebody into worship. You can't make someone worship. It can only be done when someone does so freely and willfully. Now, we say, well, if you're not going to worship, you're not going to be a distraction to those who are. But at the same time, you can't make somebody worship. The Mishkan cannot be built by drafting people into the service of doing that, because it is an act of service out of love. It's a labor of love. Okay? So do we look at building the community, building the tabernacle, doing the things that Yahweh has asked, the giving of ourselves, do we view this as just a joy, or do we just see this as another building project for a different Pharaoh? Because they came out of Egypt, and you set us free. What does it say in Romans? We used to be slaves of sin, but now that we are set free from sin, we are slaves of righteousness. You used to build cities for Pharaoh. Now you're going to build me a tabernacle. Wait a minute. How's this different? See, it is different. Because the idea is he wants to dwell with us, and we get a part in that. We're not working for a Pharaoh. We're working for a king who loves you and has redeemed you. Proverbs 22:9 says, blessed are those who are generous. 2 Corinthians 9:7, each should give according to what? Who decides? He decides. Like I said, it's not somebody's place to tell you what you have to give. Now understand, there were certain guidelines for certain offerings within the tabernacle and the temple. Like example, when Mary came after a time for purification, she brought Yeshua to the temple and she brought an offering of 2 doves. She couldn't just bring anything. She had to bring the right offering for the right thing. Okay? But what I'm saying is, like a free will offering or just contribution, no one can tell you what you have to give. Each should give according to what he has decided, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. 3 John 1:5-6. Dear friend, you are being faithful to God when you care for the traveling teachers who pass through, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church here of your loving friendship. Please continue in providing for such teachers in a manner that pleases God. We also read in, I believe it's Corinthians, Paul wrote it, but he says, don't you know that those who serve in the altar have a right to have their share from the altar, that which they receive? A Levite receives the animal receives the offering, he gets portions of that back. And so he says, so in the same way, one who proclaims the gospel has a right to live from that which he proclaims. Now, there have been abuses of that, obviously. But just saying, that's true. Another says, don't muzzle the ox. So what are you building, and who are you building it for? Or are you building anything? What is our attitude concerning the task at hand? Do we work wholeheartedly, or do we dread time spent in service? Do we dread the time it takes to build? Do we do so with a giving and willing heart? Man, to try to get people to come for a couple hours for a service on Shabbat sometimes. Do we dread service, or are we excited about it? I get to go and worship my King with people called by his name. What better thing is there? To be acknowledged as a people set apart and called by him. Where it's like, well, I guess I got to go worship God today. I'd rather sleep. So it leads us to the question, we're all willing. If you jump forward a little bit to Exodus 35, we see in verse 4 and 5, Moses says to who? All the congregation of the people of Israel. This is a thing that Yahweh has commanded. Take from among you a contribution to Yahweh. Whoever is of a generous heart, let him bring the Lord's contribution, gold, silver, and it goes on to make this list, right? So it's interesting to what you find here. Who did Moses tell? Everybody. He told the entire congregation, Yahweh wants to build a tabernacle. These are the things that are in your midst. Now, if we look, sometimes we read different accounts of the same thing in Scripture, but we may have little details here or there that we don't always see in the other places, right? This is one of those cases. Verse 20, then all the congregation of the people of Israel did what? Departed from Moses. So Moses came and he told them all these things. This is what Yahweh desires. He says we're going to do this. Then all the people went back to their tents. And then what does it say? And they came. Who's the they? Did it say they all came? No. They came. Who came? Everyone whose heart stirred him and everyone whose spirit moved him. Meaning there were those who didn't care. Look at this on the other side. In the sin of the golden calf, how many were involved in that? About 3,000. Not the whole camp, but yet the whole camp suffered because of it. Same thing with building the tabernacle. Maybe not everybody really saw the need to have it done in their midst, but who was going to benefit from it? Everybody going to benefit from it. But some people just didn't care or didn't see the need or just didn't see the purpose for it. You know what it reminds me of? A little golden book. How many of you remember the little golden books? The little golden book, Little Red Hen. You know the story? What was that? The little red hen wanted to what? Make bread? Was that it? Wanted to make bread and went around asking for help. I need to make bread. I got to do this and I got to do this. You want to help me? No, I don't want to help. And well, go somebody else. I need to make bread and this is what I need. Can you help me? No, I don't want to help. No one wanted to help. Well, once the bread, all the work was done and the bread was made, everybody wanted to eat that bread. So everyone whose spirit moved him and brought the Lord's contribution to be used for the tent of meeting, for all its service, and for the holy garments. So they came. They came. Both men and women, all who were of a willing heart, brought breeches, earrings, signet rings, armlets, all sorts of gold objects, every man dedicating an offering of gold to the Lord. Okay, Exodus 25, 3 through 7. So the need was given, and the people gave. But notice, the people could not put stipulations on it. I will only give this piece of gold if it's used for the menorah. I will only give of this if it's done to put in the ark. I want to say that I had a contribution in the most holy place. I'll supply all the wool for everything as long as my name is put on it. See, the people gave, but they couldn't put stipulations on it. Okay? Because who had the vision for what needed to be done? Moshe. You know? And so he had to oversee the thing. So he had to make sure of what was given, where it was to go, and how it was to be used. 25:8. So let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. According to all that I show you, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. So he says there to make me a sanctuary. What's the word for sanctuary? Now we know the word for tabernacle is mishkan. What's the word for sanctuary? Mikdash. How many of you are familiar with the word kadosh? Kadosh. Kadash is the word that's used here for sanctuary. Mikdash, it's the same root. Okay? So holy. So what is a sanctuary? It's a holy place. So God is saying, when he says make me a tabernacle, he says make me a sanctuary, make me a place that is set apart and hallowed, so in the midst of the sanctuary, in the midst of the mishkan, the tabernacle rather. Because did God dwell literally in the whole part of the tabernacle? I mean, okay, he's everywhere, okay? But did he dwell in the whole of the tabernacle? Did he dwell in the courtyard? No, he dwelt in the most holy place. So this is where it was to be. So his way is in the sanctuary. You find his way, I believe it's in the Psalms. He says his way is in the sanctuary. What does it mean, his way? If you look, Ezekiel 43, 10 and 11 says, you human being, describe this house to Israel, so that it will be ashamed of their crimes and let them measure accurately. If they become ashamed of all they have done, show them the elevation and the plan of the house, its exits, its entrances, all its details, the decorations, all the specifications, its design, its Torah. Sketch it for them to see so that they can observe the entire design with the specifications and carry them out. How in the world is learning how something is built and what it's supposed to look like bring conviction? Because that didn't stop there. God said, show them how all this is there, and you can't just stop and say, well, this is what it's supposed to look like, without saying, and this was its function. I mean, think, again, Hebrew thought. It's not just what something looks like, it's what it does. Okay? Same thing with the tabernacle. It's not just what it looks like, but what was its function. And so if we learn what the function is, then we can start to see its purpose. And so when we see the house or the tabernacle or the temple that was in their midst, and we learn its function, then we start to see the glory of God and how all these little things that many people overlook is a big deal. So explaining the task, what do we got? First, the tabernacle, we have a purpose. What was it? Build me a mishkan that I may dwell among you. Okay? Build me a tabernacle that I will dwell among you. Then it's furnishings. The furnishings are the function. It's the purpose or the how he will dwell. Okay? Then we have the ordination of the priests. That's the operation. Okay? The actual work, the actual service, or the worship that was involved in it. Because if you have the tabernacle and you have all the furniture there, but you don't have someone fulfilling the task of what those things were used for, are they fulfilling their purpose? No. Then you have the garments or the vestments, which was the covering of those who were to serve. Every piece, every part was a representation of the glory in the heart of the Father. Okay? And all these different pieces had to work together. Did you ever stop to realize and think about that the Levites were part of the tabernacle? And we think about them as a separate entity. They were the tribe of Levi, but their function and role when the Mishkan was built was to serve there. So the tabernacle is Mishkan, or a dwelling place. If we break down the words, we get a pretty interesting thing there. The letters, Mim is water or chaos. The Shin is teeth, or to consume or to destroy. The Chaf is a palm or an open hand, or it's to cover or to allow something. And the Nun is fish starting through water or activity or life, or the quickening of life. If we look at the word picture of the word tabernacle, what we see is to destroy chaos and allow life. So what was the function of the tabernacle in our midst? To destroy the chaos of this world and allow life in our midst. A place for Yahweh to dwell, where we acknowledge Him and all of His ways, and we learn to walk in them. Okay? The Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds states this: because of the theophany at Mount Sinai, the tabernacle was critically important for the Israelites. The visible manifestation of Yahweh and the establishment of His covenant with them at the mountain marked that spot as holy, a place where the Israelites had encountered the divine. But this location was not to be their permanent dwelling place. How could they retain the holiness and the sanctity of this location if they left? So the construction of the tabernacle answers this dilemma. How can we keep the presence of God in the midst of our camp if we leave this place? Okay, take it with us. Right? And they didn't have to come up with that. Yahweh told them. Right? So the question is, was the tabernacle temporary? Was the tabernacle temporary? Well, yes and no. Because the tabernacle stood longer than either temple. Did you ever know that? The tabernacle stood longer than either temple did. The first temple, the second temple, neither of the temples stood as long as the tabernacle did. But the tabernacle was what was supposed to be set up and taken down and moved and all over. I mean, it was made of fabric. The temples were stone, you know? What can we learn from this? It is the presence of Yah is supposed to be carried with you. It's supposed to go where you go. The presence of Yah is supposed to be with mankind, carried within. Right? Exodus 25:9. According to all I show you, after the pattern of the tabernacle, the pattern of the instruments, so shall you make it. So we see patterns in the sanctuary. There's a lot you can do with this. I'm not going to do a lot on here, but there is a lot you can do with this. Here's one. Okay? The tabernacle provides a pattern. Here is one pattern of how we see examples of this in other places in Scripture. So Mishkan is from the word shachan. What does shachan mean? To dwell. How many of you have heard the word Shekinah? Okay, that's an Englishized word of the Hebrew Shekhinah, which means it's the dwelling presence of Yah. Okay, so Mishkan is from the word shachan, which means to dwell. So where does He dwell? In a place that we have prepared for Him. That's the simple answer, isn't it? So how do we prepare a place for Him? Here's one example. 2 Kings 4:8-10. One day when Elisha went to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food, so whenever he passed his way, he would turn in to eat there, because every time we went by, there's this woman who said, I know who you are, come let me feed you. So he said, you bet. All right. Verse 9, so she said to her husband, behold, now I know that there is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way. I know this guy's a man of God. He's always traveling through here. I want to do something for him. Let's do this. Let's make a small room on the roof with walls and put there for him what? A bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. so that whenever he comes to us, he can go in there. So whenever he comes to us, he has a place by himself. He has a place where he doesn't have to interact with anyone. He can focus on dwelling with the Father. What we would call prayer closet. There was a place that was set aside just for him to dwell, right? Now, interesting thing is the word for tabernacle, mishkan, can represent this story. Because we have mira, which is a bed, a shulchan, which is a table, a kiseh, which is a chair, and a ner, which is a lamp. Menorah. So we have here a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp that she set aside for the prophet, so when he came through, I submit to you, she helped build him a home away from home. A tabernacle in his own midst, if you will. A place for him to dwell with the presence of Yah by himself. Pretty cool, huh? So while the Mishkan was real, there was also a lot of symbolism. Like we said, how can we draw the symbolism if we don't establish what it was, right? So in fact, there is sufficient reason to suggest that the tabernacle contained much symbolism that relates to the divine garden, the Garden of Eden. This type of connection has been observed between the temple in Jerusalem and the Garden of Eden, but also applies to the tabernacle. You ever stop to think about the tabernacle representing Eden? About the tabernacle representing Jerusalem? It fits. There we go. The Genesis narrative describes the Garden of Eden as being entered from the east. How was the tabernacle entered? From the east. It was open on the east, so when you entered, you were going west, but the opening was towards the east. The cherubim were stationed to guard access to the garden, as the cherubim are erected as the tabernacle to protect the presence of Yahweh. Were they not? Adam in the Genesis story was placed in the garden to work and to care for it, to protect and to serve. In Genesis 2:15, the combination of verbs occurs again in the Pentateuch only with reference to the duties of the Levites who took care of the tabernacle. So what God told Adam is the exact same thing that the Levites were tasked with, which meant Adam was representing a priest. The lampstand as a tree of life also fits within the garden symbolism. Interesting. So Hebrews 9:22. With blood almost all things are purified according to the Torah, and without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness. Thus, it was necessary for the, what's that word? Copies. Copies of the things in the heavens to be purified with these, but the heavenly themselves with better sacrifices than these. For the Messiah did not enter a sanctuary made with human hands, but a, what? Copy of the true one, but in heaven itself now to appear in the presence of God for us. So it is my belief, my thinking, you don't have to agree, but when Yahweh showed Moshe what the tabernacle was supposed to look like, I believe he literally showed him what it was supposed to look like. He showed him the original so that he could make the copy. So he said, you see this menorah? You see how high it is? You see how it's made? Do it like that. I believe that he showed him what he was desiring for him. So we are to, I put in quotes, make a tabernacle after the pattern given. Notice key words in here that we find in like the Genesis story and in the building of the tabernacle. Okay? And this is from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Key words that are given here. Make, see, complete, bless, sanctify, work, behold. Same type of things that flow through both narratives. Okay? In the universe, in the Genesis account, we find, and God made the sky, and God made the two large lights, and God made the beasts of the earth, and God saw all he made, and behold, it was very good. The heavens and the earth and all of their array were completed, and God completed all the work that he had done, and God blessed, and God sanctified. Okay? In relationship to the Mishkan, the tabernacle, we read, they shall make me a sanctuary, they shall make me an ark, make a table. Moses saw the skilled work, and behold, all they had done as God commanded, they had done it. It's like, and it was good, right? All the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was completed, and Moses completed the work, and Moses blessed, and you shall sanctify it. A lot of real similar things that are going on here, right? So the thing is, as God has done in the beginning, Doesn't he want us to continue? I mean, he made everything in the 6 days, and then what do he want for the seventh day? Well, to rest, but for everything to reproduce after like kind. So as he created, the job of what was created was to continue creating. Was to continue, and as it was designed to function. And God said, I created, I made, I built, therefore you. That's why we're told 6 days work, not just 7-day rest. Right? So as the tabernacle is being built, what are we literally seeing? Literally. We are literally seeing on earth as it is in heaven. Don't we pray that? You know? Is it just some rote ritual prayer? Or do we really mean it? How can we pray, Lord, let your kingdom be established on earth as it is in heaven, if we're not willing to work in said kingdom? The body of Messiah is referred to as the temple for Yahweh, is it not? So what better way to dwell among men than to dwell how? In them. What better way to dwell with the people he created than to dwell within them? And we find that. 2 Corinthians 6:16. What agreement can there be between the temple of God and idols? We are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will house myself how? In them. Not just with them. In them. I'm going to show you where it says that in the Torah. And I will walk among you, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, Adonai says, go out from their midst, separate yourselves, don't touch what is unclean, and I myself will receive you. Okay, Leviticus 26:11 and 12. There's a couple other places, but Leviticus 26:11 and 12 says, I will put my tabernacle among you, and I will not reject you, but I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. Good stuff, right? In the Hebrew, it's a little more in depth. Because he says, I will put my tabernacle among you. That's Mishkani, the Mishkan, okay, the tabernacle. And the word there is betochachem, betochachem. And so the word betochachem, the root word is tavek. Tavek literally means to splice and have something in the very center of. So he's literally not saying that, and I will put my tabernacle in your midst. What he's literally saying is, my tabernacle will be in the very depth of you. In the very center of you is my tabernacle. So I will put my tabernacle in you, and I will walk, same word, in you, and be your God, and you will be my people. So what we're literally reading here, I will put my tabernacle within you, and I will not reject you. And I will walk within you and be your God, and you will be my people. So can we say, well, don't you know your body is a temple for the living God? Yes. But can we say that we are said temple if we're not willing to prepare the place for him to dwell? How do we prepare the place for him to dwell? Well, that requires giving of ourselves. How do we give of ourselves to God, who we can't see, who I can't, to the midst of the community, to the midst of his people? We learn to build his kingdom here and now. Amen? All right.